Good morning. Today I'll be presenting on shunning. My name is Ronan Cryz. So I'll be talking about shunning on the point of view of three different philosophical perspectives. First is Christian ethics, next Aristotle's virtue ethics, and then utilitarian ethics. So shunning, the meaning of the word means to persistently avoid, ignore, or reject someone through antipathy, aversion, or caution. We'll first look at shunning through the perspective of Christian ethics. So Christian ethics is based on the moral teachings of Jesus Christ and the Bible. It emphasizes love, forgiveness, humility, and compassion as the foundation of moral life. So the goal of this ethical school is to follow God's will and live according to Christ's example, which is to treat others with mercy and kindness. So, the standpoint of Christian ethics is that shunning raises questions about whether the exclusion of an individual aligns with Christ's teachings on love and forgiveness. So, Jesus emphasizes mercy over judgment when he declares, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone." This challenges the views on moral authority to condemn or isolate others. So Jesus here is pretty much saying that if you know that you have sinned, then you can't judge someone, essentially. So Christian ethics is grounded in unconditional love. And as St. Augustine wrote, "Love and do what you will." This suggests that true morality stems from compassion rather than judgment. Shunning, then, risks violating the Christian duty to give and reconcile, and replaces empathy with moral pride. A Christian ethicist might argue that maintaining community purity through exclusion contradicts the Gospel's inclusive message, where every sinner is offered redemption rather than rejection. So next is Aristotle's virtue ethics. So Aristotle's virtue ethics focuses on developing good character traits called virtues, rather than simply following rules or judging actions by their results. Aristotle believed that living moral life means finding the golden mean, which is a balance between extremes like cowardice and recklessness. The ultimate goal of his ethical school is to achieve eudaimonia, which is human flourishing and moral excellence. Aristotle believed that virtue is a state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean, meaning that a virtuous person seeks a balance between cruelty and indulgence. When a community shuns a member, the ethical question becomes whether the act promotes virtues such as justice, compassion, and temperance. Excessive harshness can lead to vices, while too much tolerance may undermine the moral standards of Aristotle. And as Aristotle once wrote in Nicomachean Ethics, "We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, and brave by doing brave acts." Therefore, if shunning fosters resentment or moral arrogance rather than moral excellence, it cannot be virtuous. Virtue ethics would instead encourage constructive correction with a spirit of moral friendship and not alienation. So next is utilitarian ethics. So this ethical school was founded by philosophers Jeremy Bentham and the second proponent John Stuart Mill, and this judges actions by their consequences. The morally right action is the one that produces the greatest happiness or the least suffering for the greatest number of people. So, in this view, morality is not about rules or intentions, but about maximizing the overall well-being and minimizing harm. So, Jeremy Bentham's principle that it is the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people that is the measure of right and wrong serves as a moral test. If shunning protects the community's moral integrity, but causes deep psychological harm to the excluded individual, the net suffering may outweigh the benefits. So, if shunning an individual protects the community, but it also lets each individual in the community live in constant fear of being shunned, then they are suffering psychologically, and this obviously it goes against utilitarian ethics. So John Stuart Mill reinforces this balance by stating that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, and wrong, as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. Thus, a utilitarian might oppose shunning when it causes more pain than moral improvement. They would instead advocate for reconciliation that maximizes well-being. In essence, utilitarianism measures morality not by doctrine, but by its power to enhance collective human flourishing. Next, we move on to some examples of shunning. So first we have the Amish practice of Maidon, or shunning, and this dates back all the way to the 17th century, appearing in the Amish religious communities, and they have long practiced Maidon, or shunning, as a way to enforce community discipline. So members who violate the church rules or leave the faith by marrying outside the Amish community or using forbidden technology may be socially and economically cut off, even by their own families. The goal of this religion in doing this is to encourage repentance and to return to the community's moral order. So this example connects directly to debates in Christian and virtue ethics about forgiveness, moral correction, and communal harmony. Next, we have Jehovah's Witnesses and their disfellowshipping. So, this is a form of religious shunning which is applied to members of the religion who commit serious sins or reject core doctrines. So they go against the religion's rules. So disfellowshipped individuals are avoided by active members, including close relatives, except for the minimal necessary contact which must be had with them. This causes deep emotional trauma and social isolation, and it raises ethical concerns about love, justice, and human dignity. So, lastly, is my take on all this. So, after exploring shunning through different philosophical perspectives, I believe that shunning, while sometimes good and intended to uphold moral or religious values, often causes more harm than good. From what I have learned, true morality should promote understanding, compassion, and growth rather than isolation and judgment. Christian ethics teaches the importance of forgiveness and love, and reminds us that no one is beyond redemption. Aristotle's virtue ethics shows that moral goodness lies in balance, and complete exclusion often represents an excessiveness of harshness rather than virtue. Finally, utilitarianism helped me see that shunning rarely maximizes happiness, and instead it tends to create suffering for both the individual and the community. Overall, I've learned that genuine moral progress comes from empathy and dialogue and communication and not rejection. Thank you very much.